In the last lesson we made a simple project which was called My Starter, and it produced, well, Hello World in there, and you might recall that we actually changed the text within the XML, which therefore obviously influences the output of our program. Well, in this lesson we're going to use another technique to do exactly the same thing, and that is really this time by means of code. In this case the main activity Java file compared to the XML file. So this is really a parallel way of doing exactly the same thing. Just to recap to what we actually did last time to get this, we made a project by going up to the file and then new project, and then we chose an empty activity which, as I mentioned, really should be called a Hello World activity, and we clicked on that and next, and then we filled in that stuff and then created a default project. So I'll just cancel that. And also in the last video we explained what the various elements were in the XML, and I'll do likewise for the Java file as well. Also note that we've got here Gradle scripts, and these are the actual, this is the compiler basically. We can talk a bit more about it, but basically that's our build, the two build files. We don't touch this one. This relates to overall Android Studio. This one here will pertain to our project, so we will be making library additions to that perhaps, but that's later. By the way, you can see how I've got my two files laid out quite nicely. I can see them in parallel, and to do that you could split vertically, and also this seems to be interesting, move to opposite group and so on. That enables you to, you don't read about that very much, but that enables you to arrange your windows thus. So indeed I'll close my XML, and so we can just focus on the Java file. So let's take a look at our Java class. First of all, we've got the name of our package, and then we've got our import statements which are importing the library. For example, this bundle library here is associated, well, you can see it's nicely highlighted in mauve here. It is where the bundle code is, if you like. So bundle, we'll find out later, is like a list or a container which can pass data from one place to another actually. So look at that, we've named our class main activity, and it extends at whatever this is, compact activity extends, that is to say it's derived from this class. It's very interesting actually if we were to do a control click. Now that you can see at the top there, it's opened up compact activity, and that is loaded with loads of functions that we can utilize in our code. It's old, so it's legacy if you like, but we are certainly using it in our code, as you can see here, and that means that all those functions that you can see here are all available to us. I'll just do a Control F and look for one or two. We've got find view by ID. If I click on that, oh, there it is. So that's the function that we'll be referring to in a moment. The other one we can look at for the moment is onCreate, and we'll take a look at that as well. It's got some nice comments there for us, but there it is. There's the actual method itself in that particular class. So let's just go back to I'll close that actually completely. We've got our Java class, and let's see what we're going to do is to use that to write some code. So I'm going to write my code right in here. So this is where it all happens, if you like, in the onCreate. That is to say, when the activity appears, where you can see it's produced Hello World, that was using XML. We're going to use code to do exactly the same thing. And what is this code doing at the moment? It's creating the activity, which is right here. Set content view to, and that's the identification of the main, the activity main. You can see that on the left hand side in the Java in the layout. That's our activity main. You can see that there. That means that it's set content view. Well, there you are. We can have a look at that in our app content, make sure that's available for us as well. By the way, super means go back and perform the base class methods as well. So that you'll find this is always pretty standard in any program that you write, those two lines. They're really, basically, they just open up the activity for us in the first place. Okay, so we want to do some extra things here, so we're going to write our own code. And I mentioned that find view by ID. Now what is that? Well, let's just try it for a start and explain what it is in a moment. So if I start typing, oh, there it is. I've typed that. Now look how it says find view by ID int ID. And then over here, that's also interesting because that's what I was just mentioning was the library to which it where it is this here. So you can just see that that's so you can get your bearings really. Now if I want to accept that, it's probably just as well to press the tab key. And that doesn't start a new line. And now I'll just come back to that. Let me just go back and open up my XML file. And remember, I split the window, which is a nice way of looking at things. So I can split that vertically, and then I can move it over there. Move to the and then I could choose move to the right. It seems to make the two windows appear. Well, let me see, I need to open up the other one now. Oh, okay, we've got both of those. So we've got our XML file over here as well. And just to remind what we're doing here, this is the way we produced hello my world, or whatever you like. You could delete that my if you want to, and that would produce that on the screen on the emulator. So what we're going to do is to do exactly the same thing from code. In fact, what we'll do, we could either delete this. We could delete this if you want to. Just press the delete key. Now I'll leave it there because what we're going to do now will override what the XML does as well. So we've got find view by ID. Now what is that? Well, that's the way of communicating between this file and this file as well. So you'll find that this is I think we call it a paradigm. A paradigm meaning sort of a layout or a method or a programming pattern is what I'm looking for. The pattern is the way that we communicate between these two files, the code file and the XML file. And the way we can do that in this case is find view by ID. Now what that means is we're going to go over and liaise with the XML file. We're going to do that by means of an ID. Now take a look here in the text view in the XML. We've got this text view, and that indeed is an ID. You could set that in the properties box as well, but you could do it from code. You might like to call it. Let's do that. We'll call it text view 1, just so we know that's our bespoke identification. So that's how we're going to refer to that that ID. So you see this is what we call a coupling between the code file and the XML file by means of this. It allows us flexibility. I mean, we might want to identify something in another XML file. So it's a loose coupling between the two, which is really, as I say, a modern day programming paradigm. So what we want to do is to, as I say, liaise between the two. We can start off by typing capital R, which capital R stands for resources, and you can see immediately it comes up with ID, which is actually what we're looking for. But let's just take a look at the others as well. You can see we've got these here, these resources here. Layout, you can see now that layout will correspond to the layout over here in the resources folder, and you can see RES up here, that means resources as well. Layout, you can see MIPMAP, for example. So this R is generally referring to resources. The one we're looking for is ID, so I'll just double click on that for the moment. And now let's see what else I can find here. Just type that full stop and just oh, there we are. Look, here we go. This is text view 1. That corresponds to our particular ID. So I'll just click on that, and you see it's relating to the ID over here in the XML file, which is rather nice. I'll just put my semicolon there for the moment. Now this find view by ID, we can see from the documentation, produces a text view object, and therefore we can access all its properties and so on. So let me just take a look back on the design. So if I click down here at the very left where it says design and text on there, if I click on the design, just to remind us what we're doing, we've got here, this is the text view object, which is produced automatically, if you recall, when we made our default project. So what we need to do is to make an object, define an object to refer to that object, to that text view object. And the way we can do that is to declare our text view object by making it a private variable, and we'll call, and it's going to become a text view object. Let's see, oh yeah, there we are. We can double click on that, and we can define it. We can call it, say, I don't know, my text, for example, and we've thus created a text object, a text view object, I should say. Okay, so now we can use that. I'll just do a copy that, and then assign that to our text view, the return text view object. So that, you see, is a way of referring to this object over here. So once again, just to emphasize how we're communicating between the code file and the XML file. So we're trying to set the text within the text view. So let me press, and I've got here, oh hello, set text. That looks interesting. So, we've got a couple of set texts here. Which one we're going to choose? This one at the top, it says on the right hand side, it gives us some information, but basically we're going to place some string in there, and to say hello again, and character sequence, well, that looks like a more generic form of string for the moment, so we'll be using that in Java more frequently. So let me just double click on that, and then I need to put in what I'm going to say. Instead of hello, we can type something else. And then, oh, by the way, take a look up the top. When here, looks like we've got a new import, a new library being produced. Now, you'd normally have to type that in by hand, which is a bit of a nuisance actually, to know which one's which. Well, there is a way of doing it automatically, and I forgot to point out, but what did happen whenever I used the text view, which is what I could have done, as soon as I type that in, this would automatically appear. Now that doesn't happen by default, so I need to show you how to do that. We'll click on, it's a bit tricky actually, we click on File, and then Other Settings, Settings for New Projects, and Auto Import is what we're looking for. A little bit tricky to find, but there it is, and it says here, if you can just see that, it says add unambiguous imports on the fly. So I suggest you do that as soon as possible to make sure that these imports will appear automatically. They can be a little bit of a headache sometimes getting the right import, so that does that automatically. So if I run that by clicking our Run button up here, you can see that it's running, and I'll find there's my output, and then there you are. Now so look, I've got a new bit of text being produced by the actual code, as distinct from using the XML. But you can see that this one has been basically overwritten by this one. So in summary, we've produced output to our emulator, in this case printing this text from using this construction, and recall how we made a reference from here, from this text view 1 in the code file, to the corresponding ID, which of course you can change that ID, but that's the way we refer from one to the other, and we've produced this text view object. I keep saying text box all the time, that's the way we used to call them, but text view object. It's an object, and therefore it's got properties and methods. One of the methods that we've got is the set text, which will send that text to the screen. Incidentally, we've got this text, looking at this text view one property here. If we go to design down the bottom left of that window, we can click on the design, and you can see over here we've got the attributes panel. So the attribute the ID, you see, and you could change that if you wanted to text box 2 or something or other, and refer to it that way. We don't want to change that for the moment, thank you, but that's the way we would do it.